to Mental Moments, where small changes can have lasting ripples. This week I've been talking about the inner voice, and today I want to talk about the relationship between an inner bully and difficulty making decisions as adults. Okay, now, as we've talked about, criticism has helped to mold behavior. Bullying is to coerce, intimidate, and do harm. So let's say that there is an overly critical, overbearing parent in childhood. And I can think of two examples. The first comes to mind is a client I had named Rob. Now, he was raised by a Vietnam veteran with PTSD, drug addictions, and then later raised by another stepfather, or a stepfather cut from the same cloth. And their favorite statements to young Rob were along the lines of, "Do I need to draw it out in crayon for you, dumb blinkety blink, 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 blink?" And his biggest fear was to disappoint these male figures in his life, and that persisted into adulthood. Or Lainey, who was raised by a mother that criticized everything that she did. It didn't matter, but especially around food. Do you want to eat that? Do you need that? You're going to be fat? You're not going to find a husband? All this stuff. So food becomes a source of comfort and then a source of bullying for this parent. And her mother pushed her really hard in school and wouldn't let her do things with her friends and insisted that she do well in school. If she brought home a B, that was punished. So A's were the only thing that was acceptable. Lainey liked food for comfort, and her mother would then, just kind of bully her around food. And in fact, her mother threw a fit because when she graduated with her bachelor's, she and her friends wanted to have a party that included cake. Now, in both of these examples, both Rob and Lainey, as children, wanted very much to get their parents' approval, and that's the first part. If a kid didn't care whatsoever, then it doesn't matter what the parent says, it's not going to matter. But if the child is one who wants their parents' approval, yeah. Now, they often describe being anxious as kids and fearful about things that the parents would bully them on, and each became somewhat helpless or passive in their abilities to please the parent and report, of course, they reported a lot of depressive symptoms into adulthood. Okay, and, in both of their cases, when they would go to the parent to try to make a decision about something, they were so fearful of their parents' approval that, that any decision that they made, if it went badly, their parent let them know about it. Now, if it went well, there was nothing said. So there was no reinforcement of a good decision. There was only reinforcements of so-called bad decisions. And Lainey talked about going to her mom and saying, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And her mom's like, "Can't you make a simple decision?" And now, for no better word, I call this the irony of human thinking. And this is a term I use to describe seemingly counter phenomena. Okay, the thing that we're the most afraid of is the thing that we tend to bring into fruition in our lives. The child that is afraid of being criticized for eating too much then tends to have issues with being overweight, for example. The criticism is interpreted that the child must do better to please mom or dad, and then or any caregiver, and then they feel anxious. To feel better, then they seek a coping strategy, which for children very often is food. And then a cycle is born. The child is bullied by a parent for something. They feel anxious and bad and want to feel better, so they eat. And now we never crave carrot sticks, so they head for the chips and the cookies, etc. And often the child has to sneak the food because, the parent is very critical in this, especially in Lainey's case, the parent was extremely critical over food. And so, but as children, they get caught. It's just what happens. Now, in Rob's case, he is doing something that his father wanted him to do, but he's thinking about not screwing it up. Oh my gosh, and he's so afraid that he will mess something up. Sadly, when the flight system is engaged, blood flow from the brain is reduced, and our body is prepared to run, or, it's not really conducive to doing a complicated task. Therefore, he's nearly almost guaranteed to mess up. And then when he does, he is yelled at and called all sorts of bad names. Yay. Now, these are childhood experiences. Now, when we flash forward into their adult lives, you would think, okay, well, now that they turned 18 and the parent's no longer in their lives, that would dissipate, and it does not. Lessons learned in childhood are very persistent. In fact, we tend to then find proof that they're accurate and correct. Okay, it's important to note that the child that is going to tend to grow up to have issues with decision making because of overly bully type caregivers is a child who was seeking their parents' approval. Now, the first step in changing these childhood patterns is to identify the interpretations that are driving the difficulties now. What are those anxiety thoughts like? What if I get this wrong? What if I make a bad decision? I gotta make a good decision. What if I get this wrong? What if somebody doesn't like me? That sort of thing. Look for those kinds of questions. Now, if it's more of along the thought, there can be the shame guilt thoughts, such as, if I get this wrong, I'm going to let somebody down. I'm going to disappoint, like, Rob's case, I'm going to disappoint this male. I'm going to disappoint somebody. I'll let somebody down. And then we got to start working on disputing those patterns of thinking. Or somebody who believes that they're always going to make bad decisions, you can examine that and see, is that 100% true that every decision ever made is wrong? Probably not. The one time that a person decides to eat a healthy option over fast food has made a good decision. And so very often we don't see all those decisions made every single day that are good. So people often get their kids to school, dressed, fed, homework sent, themselves to work, tasks completed, and they don't see these as decisions. Yet, every action, there is a choice. Even if that choice is between two things we don't like, it's still a decision, and you made a decision and you got it. So it's good. Now, the next step is realize that there isn't such a thing as a perfect decision. There is no perfect. So there is no perfect decision. Also, it's really difficult to understand that most decisions, we don't know if they're good or bad in the moment we're making them. We're making them based on the information we have at that time. It isn't until later on whether we decide, well, that was a good decision or bad. Now, there can be some decisions that are clearly not healthy ones for us, such as, I think I'm going to go eat a Whopper for breakfast. Probably not your best idea. Other than that, when we make a decision about, I want to live in this city, and then you move to that city, you were basing that decision on what you knew before, and then you move to the city and go, oh, I didn't know that to be true. If you want to learn more about ways to be a friend to yourself and to dispute if you want to learn more about ways to be a friend to yourself, if you'd like to learn more about ways to improve your relationship with yourself, look at my courses, How to Be a Friend to Yourself, and morejoyfullife.com. Thank you, and stay tuned for other episodes on how to be a friend to yourself.